When it comes to the character of Fizzarolli, there are typically 3 episodes that are brought up. Lululand with his robotic counterpart that traumatized children everywhere, and to this day, still gives me Springtrap vibes. Come on people, it can't just be me who thinks this. The second is the episode Oops, where he and Blitz are kidnapped by Crimson and begin to mend their damaged relationship. Quite a good episode, I may add. And the third, of course, is Mammon's magnificent musical mid-season special, featuring Fizzarolli, which is quite the mouthful. What is this, Revenge of the Iron-Blooded Swordhound? But if you're here, then you've seen the thumbnail, and you know that this little video isn't about Fizz, but about the fish babes, Glitz and Glam. And even though I would love to do a little something on Fizzarolli, I would like to work my way up to that. Plus, with the rest of Season 2 underway, there could be more to talk about, especially after Full Moon. We all know why, don't we? So, let's talk about the Fish Twins and how they worked so well as antagonists for the mid-season finale. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that they're great antagonists for the show, but rather for the episode, and more specifically, for Fizzarolli in this episode. This is partially because they're not very compelling beyond their designs, being, like every other design from Vizbipop, original and intriguing, since their personalities are rather vapid and shallow. But they do work as well as they do for this episode and everyone's favorite cyberclown because they are, for all intents and purposes, the physical embodiment of his insecurities and feelings of self-doubt. Now, if you're watching this, I assume that you would have seen the episode. You wouldn't dare watch this if you hadn't, would you? So you know that the focus is on Fizzy's insecurities with himself and his work as he preps for Mammon's annual clown competition. And this is where the twins come in to throw a monkey wrench in his whole program. A program that was already on the fritz due to Fizz's confidence being shook by the pressure placed upon him not only by Mammon, but by himself as well. Because when we first see Glitz and Glam, they're confident and ready to go, convinced that they've got this competition in the bag, despite Fizz winning for a straight decade and being an icon in his own right. Compare their state of mind to that of the imp, who needs to continuously remind himself to keep everything together, and their presence is not helping his self-doubt in any way. So when things kick off, you can see why they're confident based on how they can match Fizzarolli step by step, and in some cases outclass him. He may juggle, but they'll juggle while balancing and on fire. He'll make a massive balloon of Mammon's head, but they'll crown the deadly sin. However, their capability to keep up with the imp isn't necessarily what makes them work as well as they do for this segment of the show, but rather it's how they can affect him and turn him inside out by playing on his insecurities about himself and his craft. Any creative types watching this know what I mean when it comes to pouring your heart, your soul, and your time into whatever it is you're working on, and how even a small amount of doubt can eat away at you like cancer. I mean, Mammon does that too, but not to the same extent as Glitz and Glam, considering the King of Greed will on occasion do what he can to prop his star up to keep the dollars pouring in, whereas the twins are there to undermine Fizz and tear him down however they can. And they demonstrate their prowess at doing so by basically becoming Fizzarolli's insecurities personified. And like all forms of self-doubt, it comes sweeping in like a tempest, only to vanish back into the shadows, and watch as you squirm under the pressure like a worm on a hook. This is best exemplified in their song and dance routine as they pull out all the stops to prove that they've got a shot at Fizzy's title. They integrate their fish anatomy into their dance routine, they mirror each other perfectly, they use their sex appeal to their advantage, and even the lyrics they sing showcase their envy of and drive for the top spot. Glitz and Glam, as they claim, have come to bring something new to the table, using everything I just mentioned, and the fact that there's 2 of them working in perfect unison certainly adds to Fizzarolli's already shaken confidence. But then we get the big reveal that they can fly, and even do that in unison as well. And based on the look Fizzarolli has before running off with tears in his eyes, it's clear that his worst fears as a performer had been realized. Someone, or in this case a pair of someones, has come along with a new act and aren't pulling any punches. The fact that they had kept their wings under wraps until their final performance certainly sells that, considering that they had had that ready in the back pocket so they could catch their opponents off guard. And based on the episode's plot, it worked like a charm. It doesn't really help that the lyrics are basically mocking Fizz, and I find it mildly ironic that 2 fist chicks from the Envy Ring may have made Fizzarolli envious of their act once they take flight. It should also be considered that Fizzarolli had been doing his routine for a decade, which means that anyone could size him up prior to joining Mammon's contest. So there is a chance that the twins could have been studying him so they could find ways to knock him down a peg, or perhaps make an educated guess at whatever routine he could be busting out on stage. And since he spent his entire warm-up in a panic, you could say that Glitz and Glam did their job and passed with flying colors. Granted, 2 minutes notice is the superior song and act, and by a lot, to be fair, but the fact that the twins were able to cripple Fizz for a time demonstrates their drive to claim the positions they crave at Mammon's side. And with the imp quitting, there's a chance that they'll be the new face of Mammon's clown show. I'm also willing to bet money that they survived that foundation collapsing on top of them, since Glitz did more damage to Stolas during their first go-around. And despite Fizzarolli being the Greed King's cash cow for the longest time, having the twins as his next product may work in his favor. Unlike Fizz, they've got a little double trouble, and Mammon can capitalize on people purchasing multiple bots for whatever purpose. We already know that one guy in Ozzy's club owned 4 Fizzies, and capitalizing in such a manner is right in the Sin's wheelhouse. And things may end up going down this route, as we see in Full Moon, where there's a blowout sale on Fizzbots, indicating that Mammon will be needing a new mascot sometime soon. So it may not be long before we end up seeing the twins again. And despite not being able to keep the clown down for good in the end, Glitz Glam did manage to succeed in breaking Fizzarolli down enough for him to turn tail and run. The look that Glitz gives when that happens really cements the amount of pressure they added to his already stressed mind. And thankfully Ozzy was there to help him out, otherwise simply imagine what would have happened next. Also, that line of "money can't buy happiness, but it can rent you paradise" is honestly quite profound, and I wasn't expecting to hear that in this show of all places. Especially not from demons fighting for a spot besides the personification of greed. So that was my little video on Glitz Glam, and I hope all you traversing the internet enjoyed it. If you did, comment your thoughts down below, pimp slap that like button, and if you haven't already, do subscribe and hit that bell. My video on the V's and why they're doomed should be out very soon, and I certainly hope you viewers will enjoy it. In the meantime, Godspeed, and I'll see each of you in the next installment.